Hey neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Furrion's most anticipated RV AC unit here. This guy right here is the Chill Cube, and this is going to come with either a black or white shroud so that you can match your trailer's aesthetics. It has a 18,000 BTU rating, which is well above average, which you'll typically see is about 13.5 on most trailers. Especially travel trailers. Now, if you have a fifth wheel, typically you kind of have more space and you're in that 15,000 BTU range. But with this 18,000, you can easily do your whole trailer. Due to the EPA's new regulations, all new AC units are going to have to be made with R32 refrigerant. Now, because of that, older systems aren't going to be compatible with these newer units. So you won't be able to just easily swap out your rooftop unit with the new Chill Cube like you used to in the past with other units. Instead, you're going to have to also find the correct kit for your trailer, and that's going to either be the ducted or non-ducted versions. If you need any help with that, please feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to help you out here at eTrailer. So right now we have the unit in turbo mode, which is going to be the loudest it's going to get, and we can still have a conversation even though I'm up on the roof literally right next to the unit, which is going to be a huge difference maker when you're at the campsite. You're not going to have this loud, obnoxious box up on the roof of your trailer annoying all the neighbors around you. Now we've gone over just a few of the features. Why don't we go inside our trailer so we can get the full look at how our Furrion Chill Cube actually functions. So taking a look at our air distribution box, this is for the ducted systems. It's going to have a little vent right here so that you can open and have airflow down right at the actual air distribution box as well. If you just wanted to kind of push through all those vents, you just close that right up and it's going to force air out through that. Now there's going to be 4 different speeds for our fan here. We're going to have, turn it on, we're going to have a auto, a low, a medium, and a high. And we just press that fan button to kind of move through our system here. And there's also a turbo mode, and that turbo mode is going to quickly force air through the system, so that way if you're trying to cool down your trailer after a really hot day, or maybe you have a optional heat strip added in and you want to kind of force that hot air through the trailer a little bit quicker, kind of warm things up, you come over here, hit your turbo mode, and be good to go. Now over on the other side we have our mode button. So there's a couple extra features on this that other units don't really have. We have a dry mode, so when we hit dry, what this is going to do is act as a dehumidifier, and this unit can actually pump out about 1.8 pints per hour. Right next to our mode selector we have gear. Now to use this function we are going to need to be in our cool setting, so we will need to switch the mode over to cool, and then we can press gear, and what that does is it's going to drop our energy consumption down to 75% or 50%, and that's going to be really, really useful for those boondockers out there that are trying to limit their energy usage and still be able to cool their trailer down. Over to the right we have sleep mode, and what sleep mode is going to do is after 30 minutes, it's going to increase the temperature by 2 degrees, and then after another 30 minutes, it will increase another 2 degrees, and then it'll hold that temperature for 7 hours. After the 7 hours are up, it'll go back to whatever setting you initially had the unit at. In the center, we have our temperature, so you can see we have it set at 60. If we want to go a little bit warmer, we can push that back up with our positive button. If we want to go back down, get a little bit cooler, we can go ahead and hit that negative and drop it to our desired temperature. So one other mode that is going to differentiate this unit from some of the others on the market is that it also has a turbo mode, so that way when you get to your trailer, maybe you've been out at the river all day and you come back and your trailer is super hot, maybe you had something else happen and your AC wasn't on, well you can come in and press that turbo button, and that's going to kick it up into a higher gear with a fan. And even with that turbo mode on and our vent closed right here running through the ductwork, we're still able to easily talk, not have any kind of super loud distraction from that. So it's super nice that Furrion has really put a lot of effort into quieting down all these units. So with our unit, we're also going to come with a remote. It's going to have all the same features as we have up on our air distribution box, along with one other one. So it's going to have this follow me setting. So if I hit this and I move throughout our camper, this is now going to be our temperature probe. One of the biggest problems that has plagued an RV industry is the temperature probe for most units is up in the roof. So when all that cold air is kind of sitting up there and it's not really traveling down, your temperature probe thinks it's a lot colder than it really is inside the camper. So being able to walk towards the back of the trailer where the AC isn't blowing, hit that follow me button, and then have it read the temperature and adjust is going to make it so much more convenient and a more comfortable experience. One other button on here that isn't going to be useful for us just because of the air distribution box that we have, but if you have the non-ducted version, it's going to have a grate on it that you can adjust back and forth, so that way you can adjust that airflow either towards the front of the trailer or towards the back of the trailer. And that's going to be that swing button right there. And it's a motorized grate that's going to be moving up and down. This also will have a timer on and timer off, so if you only want to run your AC for maybe an hour or so, you could go ahead and set it up so that way it would automatically turn off and conserve energy. So this also does come with a mount, so that way you can drop your remote in and not lose it or have it sliding around as you're driving around. Now with our neighbor today, he's planning on ripping out all the walls, all the furniture in here, so he doesn't really want to have this mounted just yet because he's going to do some painting and make this trailer look a little bit more modern. So we're just going to set this to the side for right now. If you didn't want to drill any holes into your trailer, you could also get maybe some double-sided tape and just stick it to the wall. As far as installation goes, this is a super easy process once you have the unit up there, because you're really just swapping over the wiring from the previous unit. And a lot of people come to us and say, hey, I want a direct replacement for my unit. Well, when you're swapping out the entire system, it pretty much is a direct replacement, because all you really need is a 14 by 14 hole, your 110 volt wiring running in from the trailer, as well as 12 volt power coming in so that you can power your air distribution box. In this case, all we really needed was that 110 with this unit. So it was a little bit even, it was even a little bit easier to do just because we didn't even need to use all the other stuff. But getting the rooftop unit up onto the trailer can be a challenge. And if it is for you, try reaching out via our dealer locator and we can help you find a shop nearby that can help get your unit installed. So the first part of our install is going to be removing our old AC unit, and to do that we're going to need to be inside our trailer first. We're going to pop down our air distribution box, which is also going to hide our 4 bolts that latches the rooftop unit down onto the camper. Now each one of these is going to be a little bit different, but for the most part you're typically pulling out maybe like 2 to 4 screws. Maybe you have a couple pieces where you got to just kind of pop it out. Ours, it was already falling down, so they just shot a couple of extra screws in there to hold it in place. So we'll drop this. With that out of the way, we can see where our mounting screws are for our panel here. And like I said, he had 2 of them already kind of on the outside just because they were broken. And I think we might have 2 more hidden ones because there's these little circles here kind of covering that trim. I'm going to get a little pick out and we'll pop those out. So we have our 4 bolts. You can see them right here. Typically you're going to be using a 10mm socket. You might find that varies just depending on your brand, but for the most part that should be it. All right, you can see just like this, like we got like 1.5 inches of threads that we're pulling out. There we go. We got our bolt out. We're going to hang on to these because these don't always come with your replacement hardware. That's pretty good. Yep. And as we drop this down, you can see on this other side we have our connections up to the rooftop unit. I'm just going to disconnect that real quick. It's going to be the 6-pole plug right here. And then we have our power. So we're going to need to open up this box and disconnect it. We want to make sure that we're not connected to shore power or anything else. We don't want any chance of power coming through this box as we work on it. Normally I would undo all of this wiring while it's still up there, but to make it easier for everyone to see at home, I dropped the air distribution box, disconnected it from the controller, and now we're going to go ahead and pop out our wiring. Now, like I said, there are a lot of differences between the different brands and even some just between the different models itself. So you might find that yours does not look exactly like this. But they're all kind of generally going to have your AC wiring coming in to this area where the AC is going to sit, and then you'll typically have some kind of 12-volt DC wiring as well, depending on the model that you have, just because usually your thermostat and your controller all run off 12-volt. Disconnect our wire nuts here. And just separate our wiring. And I've already loosened that up top so we can kind of pull that back out. And here's where you can kind of see some of that DC wiring that's coming in. See all that saying 12-volt. So this is probably our furnace wires right here. This looks like a thermostat for like a wall thermostat. Good way to figure out exactly what's going to where. Look at that diagram that's on there. Typically they will have one, so we can look at each of those colors and see exactly what is to what. So it says here blue, white, that's going to be our furnace. So there's typically always going to be 2 wires running to that furnace. It's going to be these 2. So now I know this is my furnace. I can take a piece of painter's tape, write a little label, and kind of stick it on here. That way I'm not mixing any of my wires up. So I have everything labeled up. Our battery isn't disconnected because that's how we're using our lights right now. So I put the caps back on to our 12-volt ground and positive. That way none of those can touch. We don't have any issues. Everything else is dead here. We have our thermostat. I've disconnected all those wires. I'm just going to kind of tuck that back up in there because we do still have the thermostat on the wall. And if for any reason later on we wanted to switch to a different unit, we already have some wire ran. Even if this isn't the wire that you used, you could tie on your new communication wires between the unit and the thermostat and then use that to kind of pull it through the wall. So I'm going to stick that back up in here. The rest of that is our furnace and then the 12-volt and ground. So we'll need those for our new unit. With all that prep work done, now we can get up on the roof and we'll remove our unit now that there's nothing that's holding it down. Now we're up on the roof. We're going to get our old unit out of the way. We've got our forklift. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different at home. You might have to figure out a different way to do this, or maybe back your trailer up to some kind of landing point where you've got more access to get up on top of it. Definitely want a second set of hands. We do not want to drag our AC unit along the roof because this membrane can easily tear if you do that. So with that extra set of hands, we'll pick this up. We'll walk it on over and set her down. And then we can bring up our new unit, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of wipe this down with a little bit of alcohol, kind of clean the space up before we go ahead and set that on there. So I've wiped this down a little bit. You're not going to get it perfect. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Just kind of knock off any big chunks. We had a few mud daubers up here, so getting that out of the way so that our new seal can fully sit up against the membrane is going to be the most important part here. With my extra set of hands, I'm going to lift the new unit up and we're going to set it down on there. That's also probably not going to be perfect. You'll get down there and kind of see, you might need to kind of slide it one way or the other, but each time you do need to kind of pick up and then move it around. You don't want to drag it. I'll typically try to kind of eyeball from up here where we're at. We need to come back a couple of inches. And the direction that you are setting your unit in is going to be important. You don't want to have it facing so that the condenser coils and all that are facing towards the front. We want it so airflow is kind of blowing through it, and that's what's going to help cool down the refrigerant that's in here, so that way your trailer's staying cold. So with the chill cube right now, there isn't a way for us to connect to our furnace. Furrion does have a new controller and wall thermostat that's going to be coming out within the next couple of months, and that is when we're going to come back and hook up our furnace wires. So in the meantime, luckily our neighbor does not need to use the furnace at all because this is just kind of sitting in storage up until summertime, which we still won't need a furnace for. So we will tuck this up out of the way. I'm going to make it so that it's not too difficult to get to later on. But once we get the air distribution box kind of figured out up here, I will see where I can tuck this without losing it in the wall. So on our air distribution box, we're going to have 2 openings in it. And this side right here, the larger opening is going to be for our wiring, and that's going to be facing to the front of the trailer. So we're going to need to have that facing that way as we pop it up in there.
On this right here is where all of our wiring is going to kind of meet up. There's going to be a box that will set over this, but to start, we just got to get this up in place. That way all of our wiring can kind of reach. So we will pop this up. And Furrion was nice enough to include those 4 bolts that I was talking about. A lot of other manufacturers I've seen haven't really given those to you, so I'll line that up with the slots in our bottom of our unit, and I'm just going to get a couple threads in there to help hold this up. I've ran these down just a bit. I did not go tight at all. I'm going to do the rest by hand, and then we're going to torque these. That's only going to compress the gasket, which is a little bit harder to see now that we have this up in the way. But the gasket that our rooftop unit sits on is going to compress about a 1/2 inch. I'm kind of going back and forth because I just want to make sure that I'm not getting one side too tight to where it's going to kind of throw off one of the other ones. So on our rooftop unit wiring, I cut back that casing that they have on here just because it kind of was too thick. It was preventing the wiring from actually going into that loom clamp. On the other end of that, we have our trailer side. So we've got our AC wiring. We're going to pop that into the other loom clamp that's over here. And then there's going to be 2 different ways that you can actually install this. You can use the provided terminal block here, which has a couple screws that you just loosen up. You could press in the bare wire into each of these slots, and then you'd have kind of the same situation on the other side so that you can put it all together, and it's got a mounting hole that would line up right here. The other way to do this would also be to just pick up some wire nuts and just twist them all together. So that's actually what we're going to do today. So I'll bring over the power wire and I will twist that on just a little bit. Use my wire nut to get it the rest of the way. Make sure we get it nice and tight, and if you can pull it out of that, then you know you did not do it tight enough. So I should be able to do a little yank on that and not have it go anywhere, so we know that one's good. And we'll just repeat that process with each of our wires. We've got our power, now we've got our neutral, and now there is going to be one other ground that we're going to be attaching on here too. There's a 3rd wire that's hanging down. It's that yellow and green, and that is just the ground for that controller side here. So I'll bring all 3 of these together. All right. One last thing to do is just tighten up those wire looms, hold our wiring in place. On each side of this little cover that we have that's going to cover up our wiring, there's going to be a little indentation for that wiring to kind of slip through. That way you're not pinching it when you screw this down. Now this is going to face towards the front, that opening right there. I'm also going to stick all that furnace and our 12-volt power supply in there as well, just to kind of hang on to it, just because it's honestly just going to be the easiest spot to kind of hide it. So I'm going to have to kind of wind that up. This is going to be a little bit of maneuvering just because you got to kind of work around the wiring that's there and kind of push on it while you're tightening stuff up. But as soon as we can get like one of these in, we'll be good to go. Next, we'll just add on our little cover here. That's going to slip in on the right side and on the left side. It's going to have a little tab. And then we'll have a screw to go up into the top here. So this isn't mentioned in the instructions, but there is an extra piece of foam here. And what this is going to do is it can also lock into this piece that's already on the air distribution box up top. You could cut it down to fit if you needed to. Sometimes, especially with like a 5th wheel trailer, you usually have a little bit more room in the ceiling. On travel trailers, a little bit tighter. They don't build it as large. That would basically just lock in here, and it's going to prevent that crossover between where we're sucking air up into the unit and then when we're blowing it back out. So on the back side of the cover for our air distribution box, we're going to have 2 different wire harnesses we're going to plug in, and then there's going to be one that's going to be left over. Now this one is going to be used later on with the optional heat strip, but that's still in development. So until that is available, we're just going to leave this sitting right here, and it'll be perfectly safe. We'll connect these up. You can, if you really want to, mount this first and then pop out this little cover here and the other side of the cover where it's white plastic. You don't honestly need to. You could just pop your connectors in first and then mount this and not have to deal with all that. There we go. And we'll kind of just lay those across, and we can start trying to pop in our cover. All right, with one screw in place, I can kind of hold up a little bit better. I can pop in another one on the other side, so this will hold itself up. So we are going to have a little bit of a gap here just because we've got a seam cover right here with this piece of trim, and that's kind of pushing away from the ceiling here. So it's not allowing our plenum to fully compress against the ceiling. It is what it is, honestly. I mean, if it doesn't bug you, you can leave it that way. If you really want to, you can also kind of cut out that trim piece so that it can fully sit up. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's really that big of an issue, just to have a little bit of space there. Now we just need to pop in our little trim cover piece here, and we can go hook up our trailer to shore power and test out our AC. Now that we're hooked up to shore power, we can show you how this works. So there are going to be a couple ways to work this unit. It's going to be the remote, or if you're actually in here, you can come up and press on your power button. We'll start out with just our fan here to kind of give you a good idea of what that's going to sound like. This is our fan on low. So we can easily have a conversation here and it not affect us at all. If we move up, we got medium. And then we have high. And even with that high fan on and me being right under it, not too bad. Let's open up our ductwork here. So we've got a grate here where this is actually able to be closed, so that way you can kind of push air through your vents. We do have a few vents. Here's one right here. For example, we'll open that up. Even with that, like that, I could still have a conversation with someone else that's in the camper and it not be a huge issue. We're not having to yell over it. If we close that back off and we go back to the ducts, super quiet. So huge improvement over what we have seen on the market. With our installation complete, that's going to do it for today's look at and install of the Furrion Chill Cube RV air conditioner system. My name's Kevin, and if this video did not help you, please feel free to reach out to us with either an expert question, a comment, or a phone call, and we'd be happy to help you out.